Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, maybe if not one of the most notorious builds with the inclusion of the Ancestral Commander is actually pretty damn possible to get to ridiculous levels of tankability and also ridiculous levels of damage, or like pretty good levels of damage. So, what we're talking about here, if you would have seen at the start of the video, is Boneshatter, aka also known as Bonezo. Now, in this case, we're going to use complex trauma. And we're going to answer a few questions that you might have had because I've already built this character in 2 leagues ago, or 1 league ago, 3.24. And I actually did it when Adorned was a thing. So we've recalibrated the tree for Adorn. This is a level 98 tree because people don't like level 100 trees. And I know level 98's high. If you don't like it, take 3 points out of anywhere. Take your pick. Depends, it's totally up to you. But basically, or you could basically take the rage points out if you want to, or you could drop this out. Like, it's up to you, right? You can, you are the device of your own life. I'm not going to tell you how to live. But anyway, how this works is we use Fourth Vow, and then we're basically using Fourth Vow to apply armor to chaos damage taken. We also use Divine Flesh with this setup as well. So basically, we have an increased amount of total chaos resistance. 50% of elemental damage is then taken as chaos damage. Our armor applies to chaos damage, and our overcap resistance applies to chaos damage taken. So the other thing that's really OP with this setup is also the sheer amount of defensive nodes. So, for example, Born Under Fire is significant in this case because nearby enemies convert 50% of their physical damage to fire. Which basically means when they convert their physical damage to fire, you're able to then mitigate that by the use of Divine Flesh. So 50% of elemental damage taken is then reconverted to chaos damage. And then our Fourth Vow then doubles this up and basically mitigates this with our armor, as well as overcap fire resistance. So basically physical damage is almost nothing to us, right? It's irrelevant. Also on this, we're going to use Ancestral Defiance as well. And basically, that means gain 15% of missing unreserved life before being hit by an enemy, which is essentially Defiance of Destiny. Now, the other thing we're going to use is Endurance Charges, but this is going to be used to proc up our damage. So we get to about, I think, 12 Endurance Charges overall, and we'll talk through that in the gearing. And then finally, so we got Endurance Charges, we got Ancestral Defiance, we have Born Under Fire, and then we're going to use Toughened Skin. And the main thing that we need this for is that armor on our body is doubled, which is significant because we need armor to mitigate chaos damage, which then mitigates elemental damage, which then we convert inbound enemy damage to elemental damage. So it's really OP, to be honest with you. This Ascendancy is way better than the Jug and everything. Honestly, they could get rid of the Jug and just make it this, and it would be way better. The kit on this is just so much better for everything. But basically, we also have action speed cannot be modified to below base value. Now, if you don't know where this is actually from Kaom's Roots, right? Yeah, so this is from Kaom's Roots. So basically, in particular, movement speed and whatnot. So basically, we cannot be slowed at all. This is also built sort of into the Jug Ascendancy. But this is like the combination of 2 Jug points, actually. So this is like one of the best Ascendancy points ever. So yeah, this is actually going to make our build like just basically a freight train as we blast through the game with absolutely nothing holding us down. It means that we essentially, we're not stun immune, but we just simply cannot be slowed. So we still have to find a source of stun immunity. So that's something that I still need to balance into the build, but that's easy enough to do. We can do that within Flask and whatever else. But yeah, overall, this Ascendancy is really cracked as far as that goes. So that brings us to this setup. Now, the way that we are able to... I'll also note that this is a crit-based build as well for Boneshatter. So we're getting to about 96.29% effective crit. So we have to stack up accuracy, which is a little bit more difficult because we don't have the Jug Ascendancy anymore. But actually, it's not too bad because precision is our best friend here. So, basically, there's a couple of things going on with this build too. We do have armor and we have evasion, which gives us 42% evade as well. And this is because we're notoriously using my favorite amulet in the game, which is the All's Uprising. Now, you could go 2 routes with this. You could run Determination, or you could get a Grace one. These drop specifically from the Crystal King. So, really easy to get if you're going after it. And then we want to anoint it with Charisma. And the other big ticket item that we need is an Arn's Anguish. Now, this belt is notoriously cheap because it's just a base drop off Maven. And usually within the first day, there's always some crackpots running some insane builds of Maven. This build is made for Delve, and I'll reiterate that. It's pretty good at bossing. Like, tooltip hits like 1.1 to 1.2 mil DPS. And, you know, we're getting pretty okay bossing damage as well. This can be throttled up with a different amulet if you want to go the sort of offense route. But we have 276 effective hit pool here. This is built for comfort, basically. It's built to just walk through Delve and smash everything. Now, the question that you might be asking is, how does this build work without untiring using Boneshatter? Well, instead of just saying it's going to be fine, let's test it, because I've got a character that we can test this on. Okay, so this is about 584 depth delve. This is without untiring in the tree, so you can see how this works. Now, this has like Eternal Damnation, but my reses are totally scuffed, right? Gear changes and things like that really didn't lend well to the build over time. But yeah, anyway, this is a pretty decent depth of delve. Like, if you're farming this depth on a consistent basis, you're going to make a good amount of currency. But the build in the POB versus this can go much further than this. And this is not optimized anymore because I had to sort of jerry-rig some of the build to get it to work. So we drop our Warbanner down. And we could use Defiance Banner as well for this. And then, yeah, we basically stand still. Now, we don't have Nature's Patience or anything on this, pardon me. If we had Nature's Patience, we'd be even tankier. So the EHP on this probably is like 130k, something like that right now. But we got double that on the build that we've got in the POB. There we go. Easy. Now, mobility-wise, we're pretty okay. We've got Quicksilver Flask, but we'll change all that out. We've changed all that out in the POB, which we'll talk through. But yeah, without untiring, build works fine. And to be honest with you, because of the essentially built-in Defiance of Destiny and everything else, this is going to be a way, way tankier build with the iteration that we're going to play on the Ancestral Commander than on the Jug. Okay, so first thing of all, POB check. Alright, so this is a config page. So, number one, Soul Lunaris, Soul Tukahama, right? That's basically how we're going to progress through. Time spent stationary, I've set to 5. This synergizes with our Nature's Patience. Or Natural Patience, so, yeah, Nature's Patience. So basically, we get damage reduction. The longer we're standing still, the tankier we're going to be, and the more damage we output, right? So, it's just a huge advantage to having this. And because of the non-loss of action and move speed, this has absolutely no effect on the character, which is really good. There's no other modifier changes here. Endurance charges, yes, we'll have frenzy charges, but they're of no consequence, and that comes from Blood Rage. But endurance charges, yes, we have endurance charges. Number one, because we get this from basically everything in the tree. So we get it from Smashing Strikes up here. We don't get anything else from Smashing Strikes. We also get power charges from blocking as well with stave, but we don't need that. We also have it built into our setup as well. So endurance charge on melee stun, you're going to constantly trigger that as well. This isn't as efficient as the Jug in respect to being able to get endurance charges, because we get that from unflinching, but that's okay, because as long as we're hitting away with our Boneshatter, we should have no issues sustaining our endurance charges to get them capped out. I believe there's a couple of other things that add endurance charges to the build as well, but yeah, basically, I don't think there's anything from here. Basically, that's it for endurance charges. Like, that's our two sources, and it's on hit. So as long as we're hitting, we're Gucci, basically. We're good. All right, back to configuration. Do you have life tap? We do have life tap into various areas of the build. Fortified. Now, you're going to have to run a fortified gem initially on your 6-link setup, but basically where we get this is from this Overlord node. So this is built into our cluster jewel. So like, this is an endgame tree. It's level 98. So basically melee hits with mace, scepters, and staves fortify for 6 seconds, and that's quite significant. So yeah. All right, so further configs. Rage, 40 rage. So we get 40 rage because we take these rage nodes up here. So we have battle trance, which gives us another 10 rage, and this gives us a pretty significant amount of increased damage. And the other side of this is because we have the advantage of being able to do the Settlers of Kalgur mods on things, we can have gain rage on melee hit, crafted as an implicit on our staff. So basically every hit we get 30 rage, 3 rage, which will cap up to 40 rage pretty quickly on this setup, because basically we're a strike build. So that's where that comes from. Leeching, we have it built into the build. Flask, we have that basically on all the time. We're surrounded all the time by enemies if we're delving. Have you been hit recently? That's basically the idea of the build. Banner skills, we have War Banner build set up in this build. You could have Defiance Banner, and we just have Valor Banner Valor set to 1,000. Pride Aura, like, you could play with this, right? Some people complain about this being set to maximum and initial. You can take your pick, but I just have it set to maximum because when you're in a boss fight, this is what will apply. Trauma stacks, we're going to have, basically, we want to sit on 8 to 9, it caps at 9, but we want to sit at 8 trauma stacks all the time, so we just need to make sure we got enough attack speed to achieve that. So we put multi-strike into this build to do that. If we cap over the 8 stacks, it resets, and we don't want to do that. We want to sit at 8 stacks constantly. There's no other changes in the rest of the tree here. No other changes except for Intimidate in the tree as well, which can come from multiple sources. You could even have it coming off the Rage Mastery for when you have Rage as well. So, and nearby enemies are intimidated while you have Rage, right? The benefit of this is it does give us increased amounts of damage. I believe this setup has it because we're running melee physical damage, and this gives us 10% chance to intimidate enemies for 4 seconds on hit. So we don't really need the Rage configuration, right? Because we're going to hit the enemy. And this is Guardian and Pinnacle Boss damage. Now, there's no errors in this POB either, and it's fully calibrated for the current iteration of where the League and where the last patch went in 3.25. It's an incredibly strong build. It's just straight up strong. And the Ancestral Commander is just one of the best ascendancies for it. But anyway, let's get into the gear setup. Okay, so gear setup. We're using an Eventuality Rod, so I think Connor uses this on a number of his builds too. It's just like one of the best staves for damage in the game, mainly because you can cap out a lot of crit with the stave nodes, and you can also get really good nodes like Overlord and stuff like that, which gives you free fortify. So as far as an item goes, the Eventuality Rod is just totally nuts. Now, this one I actually ended up crafting myself, and where the base will drop is in Delves. Not in Delve, is in Heist. So you could use this build, you could tank your way through Heist all day long, and basically all you're going to do is slam it with Jagged Fossils until you get a good roll. For physical damage, you want to get attack speed, crit, and then any leech that you can get onto it, and then you want to basically, craft an implicit runecraft on it, and then you also want the accuracy mod from Harvest as well. And that's basically it. If you want me to do a build guide, because I'm going to play this build, if you want me to do a guide on how to craft this Eventuality Rod, let me know in the description below or the comments below, and when we play it, I'll show you how to do it as we progress. In my helm, basically, it's just life recovery and a lot of armor. So I got 1,000 armor helm. These are pretty easy to get in the game now, and you want to convert physical damage to chaos damage taken, because we can mitigate a ton of chaos damage. This is really useful to us. Fourth Vow is Biss, so basically Fourth Vow allows armor to apply to chaos damage taken from hits, which is super powerful. It's one of the best like melee heavy tank pieces of chest armor in the game, as far as I'm concerned. Our gauntlets, we have the things that are important are, for example, attack speed, chaos resistance, but also the non-Val strike skills have one additional enemy hit one additional enemy nearby. You can cap this to 2, so you don't need to take the additional strike skill nodes in the Ancestral Commander's kit. It's actually a wasted point because you can just get it on the gloves, and also increased accuracy is a benefit here too. Relicash's Impatience. This one's the maximum endurance charge corrupt, right? If we don't have that, our damage will drop by 1 endurance charge, but basically this is a target POB, so that's where you want to get to. And the big advantage of this is you always have maximum endurance, like brutality charges, whenever you're standing around. So just slow you down a little bit, but you know what, you'll just be even stronger because of it. Pardon me. Every time I record, my nose itches. Alright, All's Uprising. I love All's Uprising. This is my favorite amulet. I reworked the tree because we can't use Eternal Damnation anymore. All's Uprising lets us run a Grace and Determination setup. So basically we have 42% chance to dodge, 42% chance to evade, and an absolute metric ton of armor, right? And that basically allows us to get our physical max hit up to 73,000, and our chaos max hit 100,000, and 114,000 elemental max hit. That's not the highest amount of damage mitigation, but we have other things like, essentially built-in Defiance of Destiny and stuff like that, that mitigates. If you didn't want to go this route, Defiance of Destiny will work. or like a really good crafted amulet or something like that. You could get rid of grace, and you could do anything else. You could throttle damage, you could do some, there's a ton of things that you could do with this build. Like, you could change it as much as you want. Amethyst rings, basically with damage taken recouped as life on both rings. This is like one of the most important stats that you need in the build. And then resistances and anything else that you can fit in. Arn's Anguish, I do have a corrupted one that increases my determination, which gets my armor up. Basically, this is an endgame belt, so you can get this pretty early on because people will be chonking through Maven. Up until this point, you could run any other belt. It's up to you. You don't even necessarily need, well, you do sort of need this belt, but if you didn't want to run this belt, you wanted to drop your damage down, you could chuck a Mage Blood on this, and you would just be basically immortal as you go down. You're just not going to be able to damage things as quickly as this setup does. And by the way, the POB that I've got that I was running before didn't get anywhere near this DPS. This DPS is much higher because we can do a lot more with the Ascendancy because we have so many defense rungs built into it. It just allows for more. And also the game has sort of changed with multiplicative damage, so yeah. Diamond, Sapphire, Topaz, Basalt, and Ruby Flask, Granite Flask, actually a disadvantage. Ideally, you want a Progenesis on this, so if you can fit a Progenesis or afford or farm up a Progenesis, or even do it yourself and get a Progenesis, then basically you want a Progenesis on this setup as like the upper echelon endgame sort of flask, and you will be essentially unkillable. Now, large clusters, we'll talk about that when we get to the build, but basically this does use an Adorn setup. So Adorn, you have to run like the 3 Val bosses, which are quite easy. One's in Delve, one's from Architect, and one is from, I can't remember, I have to Google it. But basically, Adorn was changed so it caps out at 100%, so I just got an 83% duel. But this is really strong because it means these magic corrupted jewels with crit multi, which is what we want, and life is what we want to target. And you could put any other modifiers in there and the implicits and stuff like that. And essentially they're almost doubled in stat. So they're quite powerful and they're giving me a lot of damage. Watcher's Eye, we have 41% reduced extra damage taken from crit and 25% chance to impale enemies. This just caps our impale out because this is an impale setup. Natural Affinity, this just means when we stand still we get vines on us, which we don't get affected by because the Ascendancy now allows us to run around without being held down by that. Storm Shroud's in this build too. This is a more expensive part of the build. This basically means that we get avoidance for all ailments, so this deals with ailment immunities. So the more that you throttle your shock avoidance, the more that your elemental ailment avoidance is going to go up, which means you can become ailment immune this way. It's a really easy way to get around it. And then basically, obviously, the Ascendancies we're going to run is Ancestral Endurance, Ancestral Defiance, which is really powerful, Toughened Skin, and Born Under Fire. And then Born Under Fire and Ancestral Defiance are just two incredibly powerful Ascendancies to be running in this. It's just going to make this build totally pop off. And obviously, Maximum Endurance Charge is really strong as well because the amount of damage, even when you're getting to the point where you're playing Boneshatter to get to complex Boneshatter, you're just going to be totally unkillable with that amount of endurance charges at the end of the day. All right. Anyway, with that, let's talk about the gem setups. Okay, so I tried to readjust the gem setup so it accommodated for changes to gems because this was like pre the changes to banners and melee and stuff like that. So number one, precision is really important. So we actually put empower and arrogance on this with precision. And the reason why we can put determination with arrogance is because we're using a All's Uprising with determination roll. And this isn't a cheap amulet, by the way, but you can farm it in Delve pretty easily. And if you want me to do a guide on that, I'll do a guide on that after the event starts. But basically, determination has no reservation, and as a result of that, it means that you can put arrogance on it, and this will actually increase the aura effect of determination by 25%, which is quite powerful. So it's going to make our aura totally cracked. And then obviously increasing the gem level of precision is going to increase the amount of critical strike chance and the accuracy, and that's going to make our build pop off. So basically, that's where a lot of our damage is actually coming from, in our accuracy. Without accuracy, this build is nothing. Right, like any melee build in Path of Exile 1. So, second set of auras, we have Pride, Enlighten, Grace, Warbanner. Obviously, we can run Grace. This is actually quite strong. 6,250 and 42% evade chance with this amount of armor. Everything's going to make this build ridiculous, and I love it. And Warbanner we just set down when we need it. We have Blood Rage and Molten Shell on automation on our Weapon 1 setup. So Blood Rage isn't capped out because my character can't handle it. Actually, it can't now because I've got enough dex. So level 20 Blood Rage. This doesn't really have an effect on the build because we have so much regeneration. And then 25% chance to gain Frenzy Charge on kill. Even though Frenzy Charges don't really affect the build, they're useful to have nonetheless. We have Rallying Cry, Auto Exertion, and Enlighten. But if you didn't want to run this and you could find a way to put Arctic Armor in the build, you could put Arctic Armor in the build because this is what? 15% mana. I guess like it's a small thing, and like we didn't really use this in the past build too. So basically, buff grants added attack damage equal to 4% of damage of your main hand weapon per 5 power. Buff has 100% more effect on your minions. It's actually pretty good for minions, but yeah. Anyway, we'll see if this works. If it doesn't really work, it doesn't really do anything as far as I can see. Like it doesn't give me any advantage, but anyway, we'll have a play with it and see how we go. This is a little experimental, this tree. All right, our main body armor 6-link setup is Boneshatter of Complex Trauma, Awaken Melee Physical, Awaken Brutality, Endurance Charge or Melee Stun, Multi-Strike, and Impale. If we had Awaken Multi-Strike, our damage goes up pretty considerably as well, so, you know, we get higher, and there is a way to get this to 30 mil, but if we get to that point, we'll play with it. Finally, we have Leap Slam, Mark on Hit, Life Tap, and Assassin's Mark. And the reason why we have Life Tap is because we just don't have enough mana to sustain Life Tap, Assassin's Mark without doing it from, we need to basically cast it from our life pool. So this just means we don't really get discriminated against when we're hitting away, and we don't need a hit button. So basically, you're really just holding down one button, and every now and again popping War Banner when you need it. We could switch out to Defiance Banner. So if we went Defiance Banner, we would lose a bit of damage, but a lot of damage actually. Our survivability would go over 315. So it's really up to you. Do you want damage or do you want survivability? But yeah, that's basically it for the skill gems. It's pretty straightforward, or this will all be in the POB in the description. Okay, so as far as skill tree goes, we do use quite a few tattoos to prop up our armor as well, but it's pretty balanced in here. But yeah, tattoos are pretty easy to get with shipping these days. So basically we're going to come up and we want to grab all the nodes down here. This is where a significant portion of our survivability and damage comes from. Now, initially when you're leveling, you're not going to do this, but we want to basically target this Tribal Fury node early, and then we'll switch out of it later on. This gives us a lot of early damage at the end of the day, and early resistance capping and stuff like that hits these nodes in here. But once you put a Divine Flesh and Glorious Vanity Gem in there, it does mitigate that out, so we have to then work around that. But yeah, anyway, basically we're going for triple cluster nodes. We want all these extra Vigor, Endurance Charge nodes, Golems. Blood gives us a lot of survivability. We want these nodes down here too. We actually get Evasion and we use that in the build. But we'll talk about the nodes last. And then basically we come up, then we basically want to focus on getting all these crit nodes, rage nodes. Again, stamina. We're probably going to want this early on as well, but I do have an early tree. This is going to be a converted tree off of a leveling tree that I need to put together. And then we want to come up and grab Smashing Strikes. We want to grab all these nodes up here as well. And then finally with our cluster jewels, we've got one with Battle Hard and Master the Fundamentals and Furious Assault. And these are all 8-link as well. These aren't even very good, to be honest with you. There's a lot of modifiers you could add to them to make them better. The next one is Fuel the Fight, Martial Prowess, and Overlord. That's probably going to be the most expensive one to get. And then Master the Fundamentals, Battle Hard, and Furious Assault again. And then basically all of our jewels and everything else that you can see that we've already spoken about. I did have a play around with running Iron Reflexes, but it actually doesn't make us tankier if we're running Hybrid Evasion and Armor. It's actually just better to have Evasion and Armor at the end of the day separately, because 42% chance to evade attacks is actually quite significant at the end of the day. But yeah, that's basically it for the pathing tree. It's not like the most insane tree, but it is definitely a bit of a diverge from away from the standard way you would do a melee tree, which you usually come down here and then come back up here, take up nodes up here and stuff like that, which is what we would do earlier on. So we will have a different tree that we run for like leveling, and then we'll convert to this. You're not going to need this side earlier on. You're going to focus more about putting nodes into life and damage and stuff like that over here. So you probably still come down and path all the way up here. But yeah, or you could come up here, and it just depends on how you play the build and the gear that you get early on. And we're also going to use axes to level up, so we need to take these axe nodes like Slaughter and Cleaving early on. And we also need like these little dismembering nodes and stuff like that early on too. So that's basically where we'll focus before we put our cluster jewels up. But if you guys want me to do a leveling guide for this, I can do one in the next few days, and we can do it on stream together, because this is the build that I'm going to play, because I'm super excited by playing Boneshatter again. and Ancestral Commander is just going to be insanely tanky and insanely fun. But yeah, it's it for the pathing tree, so the POV will be in the description below and in the video. Okay, so hopefully these videos are helpful for people looking for ideas. I'm going to do a bit of a curation in the next like 2 days as well. 2 days before leagues to give you an idea, and we'll look at like creators and different builds they're putting together. So we'll see if we can find an amalgamation of different videos for suggested builds that people are going to go into the league with. I might theory craft 1 or 2 more POBs, but if you want me to have a look at certain skills or combinations down below, let me know. I'm thinking something with like Val Slams or something of that nature. I really don't want to go Spellcaster. I play Spellcasters so much. I just want to play melee and really tanky builds in Path of Exile 1. So yeah, if you got suggestions, put them below. I'll have a look at it. We've done 2 minion builds at this stage, or a Herald stacking build, a minion build, and a Boneshatter melee build. So you know, maybe something that's a lot more fast paced, or maybe something that's like dex based or something like that could be next. But yeah, I'm open to suggestions, then we can have a look and put something really cool together. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub, and all the details will be in the description. I'll put the old Boneshatter leveling guides and stuff like that in there as well, so you can see at an early level and stuff like that. But we might do a new leveling guide with it and change it up a bit, and put a guide up like the day before the event starts or something of that nature. But yeah, anyway, until then, I'll see you guys later, and have a good one.